Hi, and welcome back to the workshop. It's really good to be back. Today I'm going to be talking about my Christmas project, all 500 mil of it, this Cambrian shelf scene. But before we started and we got into the detail, I thought it was worth reflecting on just how small a project like this can be. You can see it here in front of the stock boxes for Beaverbrook. Hopefully it goes to show that we've all got space for a model railway somewhere in our home. The DMU shown here would suggest that you could probably get a more urban setting and be able to shuttle your locomotive in and out with basically the shelf plus perhaps a 30 centimetre long stick on the end. And yeah, it might not be the most exciting model railway in the world to operate, but it's something you've built, it's something that lives at home, and it's something that you can get involved in, practice new skills, try out a new prototype. So I'm really excited by the opportunity with small layouts, as you probably can imagine. Having hopefully read my book. And so hopefully the energy for these comes across through the blog and through the videos. So yeah, anyway, without further ado, let's take a look. So I suppose the signature of this cameo or this shelf really is the very Cambrian style wooden trestle bridge, which I've scratch built from various sections of styrene. Just to give you an idea of the scale, here's a pencil. So the bridge is barely 23 centimetres long. I think it's just a touch over. Each of these piers, if you like, is built from a number of standard evergreen sections. So I think the piles and the cross beams at the top are 2.5 mil square, and then these the cross braces are like 1 by 3.2, something like that, mil. The deck is a solid piece of plastic, 2 mil plastic, with then some planked wood on the top, and then the rails are running on 1 mil square section to represent the I suppose almost bulk rail style bridge deck. The uprights are 1 by 1, and these are all cut and drilled in a little template. Actually, let me go and get it, and then I can show you it. So here's the template. Let me just get it out of this little bag. I tend to keep things like this safe, because otherwise I'm going to lose them, obviously. So what we've got is a paper template which shows the sizes of each piece. But I've obviously realised I wasn't going to be able to consistently cut the bridge piles the same length, so I knocked up something in styrene that allowed me to do that. So effectively you've got, as I tilt it, you can see it's two halved. That side's the posts for the bridge, this side's the piers. So you slide your 2.5 mil square section in there, and then that's the point at which you cut. So you just push the blade down on the rod, and then once you can take it away, and then you make the same cut on each side, and then just snap it, clean it up. Turn it round, and you can push. That's just a piece of can you just make out there, brass channel with a pair of holes drilled in it in the right place. So you slide your 1 by 1 rod in, you can drill it, and then you put a small nick in it where the end of the rod is. That's the standard length. If you look, I've got 2 lengths, but that's the standard length. The full length, I think, is actually to the end here. But anyway, that's how I did them, and it made, you know, getting a consistent size really easy. So if you've got something where you need to make something in repetition, you know, you don't need a complex, you know, machine to tool. You can knock something up out of scraps. This is literally offcuts of styrene. So yeah, certainly worth something considering with your own modelling. So as you can see, there's quite a few of them, and that template allowed me to make sure they were all the same, and they're just threaded with 0.35 mil brass wire, which is 1 piece. Luckily this length of bridge meant I could use a single piece for the whole length. I think the result is really effective. There's a little bit of extra detail because I did add this strapping here, but there's no bolt heads or anything like that. I think the impression is given by the way it's painted. So after being primed in grey, they were then airbrushed in a sort of dark brown black, made from Humbrol 98 and 33, my usual mix. And then this was dry brushed with 72, Humbrol 72, which has given it a sort of warmth and highlighted all the edges if you look around the timbers. and the handrails, and it's also used on the deck either side of the rails, and I think that tonal variation really lifts the finish. The strapping is metal in real life, so that was then touched in after all that was done, and the actual metal handrails themselves and the strapping was touched in with a mix. I think it was like 98 and 33, but then added in with some 100 or 82, I can't remember which one, the orange or the red. But anyway, that just kind of lifted it slightly and gave it sort of a rusty tone. The water was a bit of an experiment really, because I wanted to have some texture, but I wasn't sure how to do it in N-gauge, in terms of giving an impression of moving water without it being caricatured, or and also obviously the depth of the layout. There's not a lot to play with here. So what I ended up settling with is, it's effectively I think it's 2mm, but it could be any thickness, piece of clear styrene, painted on the underside with various shades of browns and greeny browns, slightly darker in the middle and then paler at the edges, if you notice. And then once this was dry, that was stuck down and everything built up from there. So the actual surface itself is then canopy glue, deluxe glue and glaze, which is basically a very glossy PVA, and that was then applied to give a sort of effective water movement. Paying attention to pictures I found of the river itself, there's a mixture of movement of the water, plus then you also get sometimes like a wind-blown extra level of ripple. So I tried to build that some variation into it. Once that was dry, I sprayed it with a clear lacquer to harden it off, and also I found the glue and glaze that was slightly tacky, and I was cautious about it attracting dust and things later. So that's the effect you see here, and it's really effective. It's got a good sheen to it, and you can see there's a variation in the ripples. And then once that was buried, obviously stuck down, sorry, the piers at either side of the bridge had been made in the same sort of style as these, the same fashion based on photos, and they were placed and glued in place. The bridge was glued in place, and then it sounds a bit arse about, you know, but the filler actually was put in before the deck was added, in place, it finally in place, and painted before this went in, because I knew once the bridge itself was in, I was going to struggle to get in there, and that's just polyfiller. That's all it is, mixed up and blended to give the sort of shape. And if I just turn the camera slightly, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it here, but there's the shape here at the top of the, well, beach, if you like, because it was a tidal estuary. The shape here is slightly concave, which is what I observed in photos of the reality. Now turning to some of the ground textures, I was keen to get the contrast between the wet bog, which is so characteristic of the area, and the embankments of the man-made railway. The basic ground forms were sort of blended in with filler, and then I used Woodland Scenic's turf. I think it was an earth blend all over, and built up the static grass onto that. And so the first layer actually, a static grass, grows on top of that turf, if you like. On the bog itself though, before I did the static grass, I actually added some coarser turf, I think burnt grass from memory, but other shades would probably be okay. Because I wanted to add some of that sort of, I don't know how you describe it, but it's like tufty grass that you see. And I thought that would perhaps be the best way to do it. So once that was down, it was cover the whole lot with an initial 1mm set of fibres, and then I started adding in different colours. I often find the 1mm are very, very bright green, so it looks awful. But then as you start to add texture by changing lengths, changing shades, you really start to bring it to life. So I work mainly and engage with the 2mm fibres, and look at the winter grasses and the autumn grasses really. You can also obviously cut them yourself, so to add some variation, and once you've got it in, if it all looks too uniform, you know, if you get a beard trimmer or even a pair of scissors, you can actually create some difference in length and some variation to get it looking a bit more natural. Down here at the front, you'll notice there's some even longer fibres. If you look at pictures, you'll notice sometimes that you get I don't think it's grass as such, but you'll get like sprouting almost yellow stems coming out of some of the bog. So I used actually I think they're 6mm, would you believe, fibres with the Pico precision applicator. So it's quite fine work, and it's working in small areas. And I suppose whereas many of us perhaps would be tempted to just go bang, blitz a whole area with static grass and then it's done, I prefer to work Once that level's done, I then prefer to go into sort of the macro level and work through a scene, thinking about what I want to portray in that area. And it takes its time, but the end result's definitely worth it. And I think what I've learned here is that my ideas around tufty grass on bogs were right, and you can build that up off the woodland scenics coarse turf. It's just choosing the right shades and being quite careful and precise about where you apply those fibres. I suppose a scene wouldn't be complete really without my signature sort of patch of weeds and nettles. And I thought just here, the embankment's slightly wider because I wanted it to be the base for a distance signal, a fixed distance signal, suggesting there's some kind of crossing or something further down the bog. This is a Gordon Gravett technique, so I'm not taking any credit at all. It's postiche applied over the top of the static grass with some green scenes, ground foam sprinkled in, and build spin layers using a matte varnish, matte lacquer, to bring that to life and to effectively glue it together quite quickly. What you can also see here though is the back scene, and how, I mean, it's not even the distance of a pencil away from the front of the layout. It's got that hopefully the feel of a misty morning across the estuary, and you've got the distant hills, and then fading out actually paler at the bottom, which seems counterintuitive but was based on some photographs I had of the Dyfi estuary at the time of year I was trying to portray. And this is actually just a piece of mounting card painted with watercolours, which is eminently feasible in this small size. I think really brings the whole scene to life when you see it. I'm really pleased with how it's turned out. Obviously in a much larger scene I'm going to struggle to replicate that process, and I might have to look at using a different process, but I think in these sort of small photo cameos, photo shells, it's definitely something to consider. Obviously cheap, readily available, easy to get your hands on, and this is the second attempt. The first attempt wasn't quite what I had in mind, so if it doesn't work out, it's a cheap thing to redo and to look at improving as you move through different variants. So I hope that's been interesting. It's been a really good fun little project, and it's something that's really lit my fire for doing a larger Cambrian scene. There'll be a replication of the bridge in a bigger size, opportunity to do some structures and buildings. In fact, as I reach over to the bench, things have already started. We've got the first structure I've built in N, or properly built in N, a farmhouse. More about that on the blog. And more recently, still, a tiny platform shelter. You can read about plans and what we're doing and how that's going to look, and what I've learned from this and what I'm taking forward on my website, which is paxtonroad.blogspot.co.uk. The link is on this video, or jameshilton-cmr.co.uk. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please do consider hitting that like button, and tell all your friends, and subscribe and all that sort of stuff, and hopefully see you again soon.